Tonight, so-called Islamic State has claimed responsibility for a deadly truck attack here in Berlin. Now, according to the IS press agency AMAC, it was one of the group fighters who plowed through a Christmas market yesterday, killing 12 people, injuring another 48. The news comes as German police admit they have not caught the culprit. They've released the only suspect to date due to a lack of evidence. The German Interior Minister saying investigators are pursuing a number of leads, but for now, the German capital is dealing with a killer on the loose, and it's mourning the dead.
Inside this church, which is a memorial to peace, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and top members of her cabinet pay their respects to the victims. Leaders from various faiths also took part in the service with messages of sympathy and unity. This church sits in the heart of West Berlin, adjacent to the scene of the carnage. As people gather here, the curate from the Kaiser Wilhelm Church tells DW the shock is still sinking in for many.
It's a crowded place to be, to cross the place behind the church, to go to the bus stop and to the large supermarkets and warehouses. So of course this is really that mixes people in their feelings up. It could have been them, and this is really that makes them a little bit shocked.
Monday night's massacre was carried out with this vehicle. Forensic teams inspect the truck that was registered in Poland and appears to have been hijacked. The body of a Polish national was found in the passenger seat with a gunshot wound. During the attack, the driver rammed into crowds of people who were meeting with family and friends after work. There, too, were tourists and newcomers to Berlin, trying traditional German mulled wine and shopping for presents. They tell stories of horror.
Definitely people got injured, yes. I spoke to 2 people who were lying on the floor with broken limbs, but they were going to be okay. I saw one guy being dragged away with blood on his face.
Officials say the detained suspect has now been released and the perpetrator is still on the loose. So far, we don't know for certain whether there is one or several perpetrators. So far, we don't know for certain whether he or she had any help. This investigation is not yet complete. And the initial fear is now bubbling into defiance. Visitors to the city say they will not be frightened.
I think these people are out there and they're trying to divide us, and we're not going to let that happen. So we did think about going home. My daughter wanted to fly home today, but we said we'd stay and make sure they don't divide all of us and make us scared.
As the nation mourns, the iconic Brandenburg Gate, which has been lit up in the past with the flags of other nations following attacks, is now black, red, and gold to honor those who died on German soil.
All right, let's put all of this into some sort of context. With me in the studio now is our chief political correspondent, Melinda Crane, and security analyst, Raphael Bossang from the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. Good evening to both of you. Good evening. Mr. Bossang, let me start with you. How seriously should we be taking this claim by IS?
I think it's entirely plausible. I mean, it's so fresh that, of course, it might also be a case of somebody being inspired by IS and then the IS retrospectively claiming it's being one of its soldiers. But given the kind of pressure IS is under, we've been expecting this kind of retaliation. So I would give it high plausibility.
But also a lot of opportunism there, though, right? We don't even have a suspect.
Well, but that's not necessarily really the kind of clue you would have for like the true authenticity of this claim. I mean, they didn't sort of name the suspect, so that might sort of cast some doubt over the real kind of ownership of this attack. Mm-hmm. At the same time, the kind of that the suspect hasn't been apprehended is is different from previous attacks where people normally would go for a suicide attack. But in principle, I don't think that means that it's not an IS attack.
Okay, all right. But we still don't know. And Melinda, the prosecutors earlier today, they released the only suspect that they had. On what grounds?
They said that there simply was not enough evidence to charge him, and German law requires that he be charged within a certain period of time or released. And it turns out I think forensic evidence did not indicate that he had actually been in the cab of that truck. What that probably means, there was a great deal of blood in that cab. It is said by German media that there was no blood found on him. They probably also tested DNA and such, so they couldn't make that connection. And in addition, they had been relying on witness reports. When he was apprehended, it was in fact because at least one witness said that they had seen him and made a connection. Well, it turns out now the police are saying they did not have witnesses who had followed him all the way from the scene of the crime to the place where he was detained. So some witnesses perhaps also now rolling back initial claims they had made.
It sounds like it may have been some people who were shocked and said, there, that's the man, go get him or something, and turned out not to be the suspect.
Yeah, I mean, the arrest was made some distance away from the actual site of the attack. So allegedly a witness sort of followed the kind of perpetrator for some time, but not uninterruptedly. And for those of you who don't know Berlin so well, the area where the person was arrested is actually surrounded by a big sort of central park. So it might well be that around there's kind of dark foresty area that, you know, somebody absconded and then the police just picked up the wrong guy.
Mr. Bosang, you tweeted earlier that terrorists rely on the unprecedented prevalence of cameras and our apparently insatiable appetite for sharing images. We like to have a picture to help tell the story. So how much would you say the media then are to blame for an attack like this?
Well, it's not that the media is directly to blame, but of course, terrorism is theater, as you would say. I mean, terrorism works in terms of sending a signal by symbolic acts of violence. And so the mere fact of reporting, of course, people have a legitimate interest knowing about it, but there is a line to treat. In the more sensationalist images are shown of the site and the people being afraid, the more people are maybe also enticed to do this because they then see that, well, we're having an impact and this is why we're doing it. So it's a fine line. Of course, we can't black out the news, but we should also restrain ourselves and not sort of exacerbate by just rolling one after the other witness being afraid and therefore amplifying that feeling.
That was security analyst Raphael Bosang and our chief political correspondent Melinda Crane speaking with me earlier. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel spoke earlier today. She said that Germany stands united in its mourning and that Germans will not give in to fear.
Millionen von Menschen, auch ich. Millions of people, myself included, are asking themselves this morning, how can we accept that so many people, strolling through a Christmas market, a place of celebration, met their deaths at the hands of a murderer? I don't have the answer either. I only know that we cannot and will not give up visiting our Christmas markets or spending time with family and friends in our city squares. Neither will we allow a fear of evil to paralyze us, even if it's difficult right now. We will find the strength to live our lives the way we want to in Germany. Free, together, and open.
That was the German Chancellor there speaking earlier to reporters. We want to bring in our correspondent now, Christopher Springate. He spent part of the day around Breitscheidplatz Square, the scene of that attack. Good evening to you, Christopher. A day after the first major terror attack on the German capital, you were there right at the place where it happened. What were your impressions?
Well, it's been a very somber day here in central Berlin, central western Berlin, Brent. An outpouring of emotion, especially outside the informal memorials that are beginning to crop up all over this central square. One of them just over here to the left of me. You can see people simply standing there in solemn and mostly silent commemoration. I've seen shock on people's faces. I've seen disbelief, sadness, some people weeping quietly. I've also seen defiance, one inscription that caught my eye, simply saying this, "Not in my name." I have, of course, been talking to lots of people in this area of town. One conversation that stuck in my mind with a Muslim gentleman. His name is Mohammed El Ghanedi. He's actually the head of the permanent market, not the Christmas market, the permanent market just next to the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church. I talked to him just before the memorial service in that church. He's a man who is clearly very disturbed with what happened here last night. Let's listen to what he had to say.
I don't want to say hate. It's a crime. I'm a Muslim myself. I think they have a different religion than my own. They do not belong to us. I've lived here for 38 years. I've never experienced a feeling of hate here. Never. People have helped me here. I've never had any problems. I don't know what these people are thinking. I just don't know what people like this are thinking. That's not our religion. Our religion is peace and love. This is indescribable. What are your feelings tonight? I'm so completely disappointed by these people. I don't want to say I hate them, because it's not part of my religion, and it doesn't belong to Christianity. I'm devastated. That's not my religion.
Christopher, not just, everyday people with dramatic stories, but also political leaders. They have been to the scene to pay their respects. What did they have to say?
Well, that's right. Security's been very, very tight here today. Chancellor Merkel visiting the site twice. Her Foreign Minister, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, also here. The Interior Minister, Thomas de Maizière. I've been talking to the co-leader of the opposition Greens. And I think there is a feeling that, the pressure will be mounting on Chancellor Merkel and her government, though she has tightened her refugee policies over the last few months. Perhaps the most important sentence from the co-leader of the Greens, Cem Özdemir: this is not a day for party politics.
Indeed. Our correspondent, Christopher Springate, at the scene of that attack in Western Berlin. Christopher, thank you very much.
You're welcome.